there. That was Lillian's gun, one of the older sisters. She never really felt that she was safe, and so as she began to age, she carried that pistol with her. In fact, they had found that pistol during one of the excavations, just right up the hill, just in far up from us. And that was sometime during the 1950s. So as you see here, that and as you've just heard, that even though Mr. Whaley was not superstitious, wow, there was quite a few things that were going on. So he was having to go through some financial difficulties. In fact, the courtroom that was being used downstairs, there was a new area that was being built up. What we now call the downtown area. That area was being built up by Alonzo Horton. And they wanted to find a new county seat, and so they wanted to move the courthouse into the new downtown area. But they had to break the lease here with Mr. Whaley. And so while Mr. Whaley was away on a business trip, the sheriff, along with a couple of deputies, had broken into the house one night. They'd come in through the front door. They started coming up the steps. Mrs. Whaley heard the commotion. She met them right about the center step there. It's not quite clear if it was the sheriff or one of the deputies, but they had pointed a rifle at her and told her that she was now interfering in lawful business, and if she didn't stand aside, that they would shoot her. So she stood aside. They came up here. The county records had been stored here up in one of the rooms here. They had stolen the county records, and that now broke the lease. So Mr. Whaley was now in another bit of a financial pickle. And so this room that was being used as an upstairs sitting room, he would now start to lease out. A gentleman by the name of Thomas Tanner had an acting troupe, and the talk of actually building a theater started to generate. And Mr. Whaley felt that this would be a great opportunity to have the first San Diego theater built up on his second floor. And so this room was then renovated to look like a theater. And as you can see here, that the stage itself is at an angle. It's kind of backwards to the way things are today. Most people or audiences are at the angle. In any case, this style of stage is called a rake stage. Once this style of stage had been built, actors then started to use their own lingo, if you will. So at the back of the stage, at the very top, is considered upstage. At the bottom of the stage here is considered downstage. So anytime that you hear people who act in theater use that type of lingo, now you begin to understand why they would have used that. Now, on opening night, the newspapers kind of ran a spin on the story. They had indicated that there was 150 people that had showed up that night for the very first play. If you look around the room, not even possibly imagine cramming 150 people in here. It's physically impossible. There's no way you could have done it. But they could have if there were 2 shows. So there was probably 2 shows that evening. Then you could come, well, not really comfortably, but you could fit 65 to 70 people per show, and therefore you could have 150 people show up in one night. Now, it was the theater troupe that decided that they would build an entrance staircase, and they did build it on the outside. That way, as people would come to the show, they wouldn't have to come in through the front door and then come up these steps. They would just come up the side steps there. On opening night, all of the women would have been advised to leave their petticoats, their umbrellas, and their big floppy hats at home. The gentlemen would have been advised the same, to leave the top hats, top coats, and canes at home. So the men would have been pretty much dressed as I am. It would have been a bench system. It wouldn't have been the type of chairs that you see here. So everyone would have been pretty much knee-deep. Would have been standing room only, as well as standing room out on the balcony as well. On the back there, it has what the prices were to come to the theater. So anywhere between 50 cents to 75 cents. A lot of money in 1870. That would be pretty much equivalent to paying $75 to $100 to see an evening show today. So in 1870, once this had been established, things were going pretty good. And then suddenly, unexpectedly, Mr. Thomas Tanner dies. Nobody knows what he died of. But the troupe no longer had a leader to it, and so the troupe disbanded, and now Mr. Whaley did not have another source of income. And it wasn't until Violet Whaley had committed suicide that had sent them over the brink. After she had committed suicide, Mr. and Mrs. Whaley, with the younger children, then left the residence. Mr. Whaley built a new one-story home down on State Street, not far from here. This building was then boarded up, and Mr. and Mrs. Whaley never ever came back to this residence. Now their son, Frank Whaley, in 1909 would come back to the residence. He would open it up. The photo that you saw downstairs in the general store showed him reopening